Um, I don't want you all to think that Christmas is just started on the 25th of December, because that may not be the day that Jesus was born. This is a time that we set aside to celebrate the birth of Jesus. But the Christmas story actually did not start in Bethlehem. Because I know, well, he was born in Bethlehem. Yeah, but that's not the start. The real start of the Christmas story started in creation. And when I say creation, that means when God made everything. And he made his special creation. And that's you, and that's me. That's people. That's God's special creation, because what God did, he didn't just speak us into existence like he did everything else. You know, everything else, the animals and all of that, God said, let there be. And then out of nothing, it happened. But when he got ready to make us, he actually did it, we say with his hands, but we don't know whether God has hands or not. But it's a way to kind of explain to us that we are a special creation. But we do know that he did something for us that he didn't do for the other animals. He gave the other animals a heart, brain, and all of that. But animals have instinct. God put that in them because they know how to make a nest. They know how to fly. They know how to do that. But that's animal intelligence. What he did for us, he gave us more than he gave them. He breathed into us the breath of life, and we have a soul. And what I mean by a soul is, well, when animals die, and we're all going to have to die one day. When animals die, that's the end of their life. But when we die, we have a soul that lives on past the body dying. When God made the first people, Adam and Eve, they were built to last forever. They were never supposed to die. And as long as they obeyed God, they would live. But God promised them that when they were disobedient, or if they disobeyed him, that was the day that they would surely die. So when I just told you all that all of us have to die, it's because of what they did. They were disobedient to God. And when you're disobedient, there's punishment that comes from being disobedient. And so God did what he promised them. He told them that now you have become creatures just like everybody else, everything else, you're going to have to die. But God loved us so much that he prepared a way for us to come back to him after he had put us away from what he made for us. He made a garden and all of that. We were going to live happily ever after. But we lost that because we were disobedient. So what does God do? God sets out some laws, and he tells us that we need to follow his laws. Not to kill, not to steal, not to lie, not to cheat. And even with all of those laws that God set out, still some of us still are disobedient of that. So he sends priests and he sends prophets to tell us that God is still over us. And so a lot of times we still don't do the things that God wants us to do. But God he says, I got to make a way for them to come back. Since we are so disobedient, and since we cannot save ourselves, let me show you what God did. God says, I got to send somebody to save this great creation that I have made. I got to have some kind of way for them to come back to me. Now, they can't do it because we're sinful people. We do wrong things, so we're not. He says, I have to come myself. So what does God do? He finds a woman named Mary and a man named Joseph. And God is going to use both of them to bring about salvation for us, because we can't save ourselves. So what does God do? Well, Joseph is supposed to be married to Mary. But what happens is, before they come together as man and as wife, God intervenes. And I know that's a long word, but that means that God came over and between them. And God speaks to Mary and tells Mary, you're going to have a child. And the child is going to be the Son of God. Now, Mary is disturbed about all of this because she has not been with Joseph in the way to have a child. Now, let me tell y'all something. And then I want you, your parents are going to tell you later on about all of this because there's some things that parents are supposed to do. But when men and women come together in a very special way, then that's how we come. That's how we get here. We become children of our parents. But Mary knew that she had not been with Joseph in that way or any other man in that way. So it disturbed her. And that's why the angel told her to fear not, because the child she was carrying was a child that God had placed in her. Now Joseph, being a good man, he said, oh my gosh, when the angel spoke to him and Joseph was, when Joseph found out all of this, he was trying to figure out how could he not marry her or not be with her because of this. And then the angel speaks to Joseph and says, don't put her away. Don't decide not to be with her, because the child that she is carrying, she's not carrying the child that belongs to you or any other man. She's carrying the Son of God. And when the angel spoke to Joseph, Joseph does what he's supposed to do as a husband and a father. He took care of Mary. Now here's what happens. All of this stuff is going on at the same time. The rulers of that area that they're living in decides to have a census. That's where they count all of the people who are living in that area so that they will know how to tax them. So each person has to go back to their original homeland. Joseph, being of the house of David, has to take his wife, and she's with child, to Bethlehem, because that's the area of his original homeland. Well, when they get there, the place is crowded, kind of like Costco. And they don't have any place to stay. The hotels are full. The place is just running over with people. They have nowhere to go, nowhere to go. So on the side of the road, they have these little places where people who have traveled, they keep their animals. And so a lot of those folks who are in those hotels have parked their animals in that place. And this was the only place that Mary and Joseph could find that they could stay for the night. Well, when they went in that place, we call it a stable, some call it a barn, nothing in there but animals. That was the time that Mary is going to give birth to the Son of God. Well, surely that night, Mary gives birth to Jesus, the Son of God. And what happens is, during that time, stars that were shining over the place, and shepherds who were out tending their sheep, they saw it. And they believed, and they heard the angels were singing, and the angels told the shepherds who were watching the flocks, said, leave your sheep and come go to Bethlehem, and you'll go to the place where this child is born. So they left their sheep, and when they went to the place that the angels had told them, there they saw the child. And the child didn't have a bassinet or a crib. They had to lay the child in a manger. Now, a manger is where animals eat hay from. And so they laid the child on the hay. And then they wrapped him in what they said swaddling clothes. And what that means is the mother took rags and took strips of cloth and wrapped the child so their limbs would not move and would not be out of, and they wrapped him up in a bundle, okay? And so some say the animals kept him warm by breathing on him to keep him warm in that stable that night. But the angels were singing, and the shepherds went back and told everybody wow, y'all know what happened in Bethlehem? A woman gave birth to a child, and his name is Jesus. And that means he is going to save his people. So today, after all of those years, we still celebrate that one night in that one place when that one child was born. And that, you all, is the Christmas story.